Hello and welcome to Sunday Artist Talk. I'm your host, Lois Stone, abstract artist and owner of Stone Art Supply. And today we are talking with two of my favorite artists, Otis Richardson and Masani Landfair. Very different approaches to art, but they are wonderful indeed in their own right. So thank you so much for joining us today. Let's start with I want to kind of let people know what your background is, how you got started in art. Where does all this come from? How did you get started? Who would like to go first? Otis?
I mean, that way.
First, thank you for having me and Otis. I started when I was little. My grandmother taught me collage. My mother knows how to draw really well. And then it just kind of grew from there. So around the time I was 14, my mother took me to the Art Institute of Chicago, and I think I lived there for the next 4 years, just studying the work, studying different aspects of artists. So it's something that's been ingrained since I was very small.
Yeah. I noticed when I was doing a little research on your work, you not only are collage artists, but you also work in photography, poetry, and those are those things that influence your work. Is an extension of your work or influences?
Kind of a mixture. They all kind of blend together sometimes. My hands are in many different pots, so it all becomes one stream of thought after a while.
Yeah.
I used to try to separate them, but they all blend.
Yeah, and I like the way you talk about how you take found objects and find something that's discarded and repurpose it into something else. Is that the correct way? Repurposing or finding the beauty in it?
Both. I grew up in South Chicago. It's a very industrial area, but it's also when I was growing up, there was a lot of Perry still left. So in between those two juxtapositions of life, man-made stuff and nature in its natural sense, that was a big influence. And then my grandfather would bring stuff home and repurpose it. So I learned at an early age about green living. I think all people of culture from all different cultures have learned how to repurpose and reuse things. So that was nothing new. But I just started incorporating in my work as I got older. So yeah, that's the perfect way to put it.
Yeah. And if you've ever seen her work, her collages are, really like paintings, very, very, very beautiful, if you have an opportunity to visit her website. It's absolutely beautiful. I'm gonna move on to Otis, and Otis, tell us about your background. How did you get involved in art making?
Yeah, I also started, as a child, just drawing and painting. It's something that came really natural. And my family always encouraged that. I was talking to a friend today, how, both my parents are educators, and so when I was drawing and painting, they encouraged it. And it seems like for my birthdays when I was a kid, because like everyone knew I could draw. So people started buying me those like paint by number sets, which I couldn't really get into because it's like I'm not trying to paint, in the squares someone else's, design, but you know, it was the thought that counts. You know, it's like, oh, Otis is an artist, so let's give him a paint by number set or whatever. But yeah, I had very encouraging, you know, family, and just started drawing, painting, doing my own like comics and stuff as a kid. And then in school, I mean, that was just my favorite class, you know, art class. And so I just kept taking art classes. And eventually, when I got to college, I still pursued art. There's another thing I was talking to a friend about. Like, my parents encouraged me as an artist, but they said, well, we want you to have something to fall back on. So if you're going to study art, at least study art education, you know, so that, you know, you can be an artist and you can also teach. So I did that, and then even went on to grad school, and study art and like multimedia stuff. So I've always kind of incorporated a lot of like pop art images. You know, I think a lot of my work is kind of drawing from popular culture. So as an artist, as a freelancer, as an illustrator, greeting card designer, I'm always kind of using those kind of popular, you know, images from music, from TV, from Hollywood, you know, Black culture. And so those are kind of like my biggest influences.
Yeah, thank you for that. I want to ask both of you, what or who inspires your work the most, do you think? Because Otis is very different. He's a greeting card designer, and we'll get into talking about that in a minute. But and made some phenomenal strides in that area. But I want to find out what or who was your biggest inspiration, and in the work that you're currently doing, the things that you're doing now. How does who's influencing that? Where does that come from? Hmm. Uh-oh.
I have to think about that one.
Or is it just inside innate something that needs to come out? I don't know. Mm.
Um, I think the early influence, like I said, were my grandparents and my mother. And then when I was a teenager, going to the Art Institute and places like that, um, the pop art of the 40s and 50s, which I didn't fully know about um, until I started really studying. Um, I don't think it influenced me, but I think it made me know that I was sane because I'm picking up stuff out of the alleys and putting it together, and I didn't have a knowledge of who did this before me. Um, but like currently, my influences are just what's going on in the world, um, nature, environmental issues. So it's more of subjects influencing me than an actual person. The person that really influenced me to say artist or creative um, was at Mona Lewis. He was a sculptress in the late 1800s, recently rediscovered. Her work was just phenomenal to me. And then she looked like me, and I was like, if she can look like me and do that, I can do this too. So that was the first real influence.
Yeah. I think she was was she one of the original Southside Community Art Center? Or maybe it had been there at some time, you know, in the early days.
She had to flee to Europe because she couldn't make a living here. This was like the 18, I don't want to get the numbers wrong, but it was like the late 1800s. She was a pioneer for Black artists at that time, but she was highly disrespected.
Mhm.
Thank you for sharing that. Otis, what about you?
You know, like I mentioned about my parents, I think my parents just encouraging me, you know, really were my biggest sort of early influences, because they saw something that I did naturally. So they just sort of encouraged me to keep exploring it. I think when I started studying art, I kind of gravitated also to the pop artists just because, you know, as a kid, you know, growing up, especially in the 70s, I was really into like music and TV and you know, magazines and graphics. And so when I saw pop art, it's like, oh, you know, this is kind of what I'm into already, like comic books and things like that. And so I gravitated towards, you know, Andy Warhol and James, you know, Rosenquist and, you know, all of the pop artists. And then because I wanted to incorporate, you know, Black culture, you know, I started seeking out different, you know, Black artists. And, you know, I looked at the work of like Elizabeth Catlett, Charles White, even, you know, Margaret Burroughs, you know, here in Chicago with the really bold, you know, woodcuts. You know, I was really kind of attracted to like the graphic nature of faces and figures and really kind of celebrating, you know, Black faces and Black bodies. And then sort of looking at that whole like Black arts movement from the 60s and 70s, you know, especially with the murals. It's like I kind of wanted to incorporate that into my work too, because I felt like it's good to tell a story. And I felt like a lot of my work, you know, was geared towards the pop art, but I wanted to have more of a social, you know, message. And I kind of found that in the Black arts movement of the 70s. And so, yeah, just a lot of different influences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of different influences there. So when you're creating, I want to talk about your greeting card line for a moment. And looking at the website there, you know, you have the traditional cards. And well, first of all, how did that all come about? Because I know that you had done greeting cards before, and you're really known, really, are you more known for being a portrait artist, or, because I know you've done Hyde Park's, not just a pretty face, a couple of times. You know, I know people who do more. You've done a lot of graphic arts, and that seems to be like your day job, right?
Right.
But you have really been able to move this greeting card line into the stratosphere, you know. So tell us a little bit about that, how that got started. But and on your greeting card line, there are several in there that you won't find maybe in another greeting card company. Yeah.
Right. Well, you know, I wanted to do greeting cards. Well, first of all, I've been doing just greeting cards, like handmade cards, like for a long time, just doing, you know, one for a friend or family or whatever. And then me and my good friend Hannah, you know, we decided to do cards together. And this was back in the late 90s, you know, because we were kind of just frustrated with our day jobs. It's kind of like, you know, we're creative people. What can we do, you know, together? And so, you know, she's a writer, you know, I'm an artist. And so we kind of had a light bulb moment. It's like, oh, you know, greeting cards. And neither of us knew anything about the industry, you know. And so, you know, we got online and did some research and you know, came up with a few designs. And at first we just went to Black bookstores in Chicago. And the reception was so good that it's like, oh, I think we're onto something, and so we kind of expanded the line, and, we approached, other bookstores and other shops, and, eventually, we had a limited run in Walgreens. So that kind of started it. And then, we decided to sort of, close shop and kind of focus on other things. But I was still kind of in love with the process of creating cards. So that's when I decided to just launch my own line. And so that's how Lavender Pop started back in 2004. So I've been doing it for a while, and, mostly online, and then in a few gift shops. And then over the years, I decided to really focus on grocery stores, and I'm glad I did, because the state of things now with the pandemic and, just the economy, a lot of the bookstores that I started in are no longer around, So the fact that I'm in, grocery store, which is, an essential place where people still, shop, was like a real benefit, even though I didn't know it, years ago. So yeah, getting into Jewel Osco was kind of like an ordeal, because when I approached them, they didn't even know if they could allow me to be in the store because of their prior relationship with American Greetings, because they've only dealt with American Greetings and Hallmark. They've never dealt with like an independent, greeting card designer. So once they decided I could get in, then I just had to go through the process of being a vendor, So it all took a while, but when it actually happened, it's like, oh my goodness, I wished for this, and now it's actually, happening. And so now at that point, it was just, I want to create the best cards that I can create. It's a Black-owned business, and, definitely my cards are for everyone, but I do celebrate, Black faces, Black figures, messages that relate to us as Black people, because I feel like we need another option for Black, greeting cards. And so, I have the traditional, holidays and Christmas and Valentine's Day and stuff like that. But I recently came out with a card that said "Our Lives Matter," because I felt like I really need to do something that spoke to what's happening, right now, with all the protests and the unrest and police brutality and just, disrespect for who we are as Black people. And so I'll have to go out, because I haven't really been to the store since I put them in, like maybe a month ago, to see like what the reaction is. I felt like, this is what separates my cards from a card that you would get from another line or, drugstore, whatever. That my cards are really socially relevant, and speaks to, the people that I feel like my audience is, and that's the Black community in Chicago.
Yeah, I struggle sometimes to see, and I pose this to both of you all. I don't, not necessarily struggle, but why do you feel that? And I know especially in Masani's work, there's not a lot of figurative in her work, but it's more repurposed, and collage. Our community likes to see themselves. You know what I'm saying? And I know that that's most African American artists and African American people, or their imagery is always about African American people. And why do you think that is? I mean, it seems that we gravitate more toward the figurative sometimes than maybe the unusual, the abstract, or something that causes you to think, or makes you, you have to really kind of look at art in a way like, what was the meaning behind that? Masani, what are your thoughts about that? About representational art, you know, being kind of the mainstream?
It's needed. Um, when I first saw Otis's cards, um, I felt like that feeling, grandma's home, plastic on the couch, don't go in that living room. It felt real, And I was like, these are wonderful. But we need to see ourselves because for so long we were, and we still are, judged just based on our looks, just based on our presence. But we're deeper than that. So I don't usually use a lot of figurative people in general in my work because I'm looking at the thoughts of our culture, and I'm looking at the feelings and the emotions of our culture. So that's what usually comes out in my work. But there is there's a need for Black people to understand that we need to look beyond the portrait, the figurative. And there have been many great artists who did that. But I think there's room to mix the two. And I think the internet and social media has done a great job of showing us ourselves, that we are varied in our culture, in our likes, in our ways of living, and we can see that now.
Yeah.
You can look at a woman who lives in England in a, stylish old-fashioned house, and you see the sister who has the rainbow rooms, and so it's like we're varied in our presence on this earth. We just never got a chance to see it. So I think it's necessary, but we can also leave a lot of room to expand.
Yeah, that the one group of figurative work that I did that I saw of yours recently was at the Phantom Gallery. It was a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And tell us about that that particular
series.
Vision. Yeah.
I don't like series, but I'm getting used to the idea of doing them. That was personal because it was about how Black women are left out of their accomplishments, or their story is told almost making them a villain. So the women in each piece represents a story that can represent many women. And it was called the New Patron Saint, to give them honor, to give them, to let their stories be shown. And I have a lot more to do, unfortunately, under circumstances.
Yeah.
So those were the first time I used on purpose images of actual people to tell their story. And it was an interesting response.
Yeah.
Yeah. I plan to do a series about children. And another one about men. So they're still developing.
Yeah.
But it was
Can't wait to see him. Yeah, that's gonna be good. That's gonna be great. I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, I'm trying to. So what's next up for you both? Otis, what will you be working on next? Are you with? I know the greeting cards will probably keep you busy, but are you working on anything now?
Um, you know, I'm moving in a direction of editorial cartoons, just because I'm trying to be more active on Twitter,
Mhm.
and I'm also part of this movement called ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery, which is really kind of pushing the need for reparations, you know, and there's a whole kind of understanding of lineage, um, of the wealth gap, you know, that we're dealing with as Black people, and how wealth has not been passed down from previous generations because of slavery and Jim Crow and redlining and all of these things. So as I ingest a lot of this data, um, I'm kind of doing editorial cartoons that are more political. And so that's kind of the direction I'm going in right now. Although, like you said, the greeting cards keep me very busy because I have to manage all of the stores that I'm in, but I am part of a like this emerging greeting card group that was started not too long ago, and it's kind of like this. It's artists, greeting card designers talking about, you know, what they're doing and what they're working on, what their obstacles are, and things like that. And you know, someone suggested, you know, you don't have to do everything yourself. You know, Otis, you might want to, you know, reach out to somebody and get some help. And I actually did that. So it's a friend of mine who is like an expert in merchandising. So she
Mhm.
might actually be helping me service some of the stores because I'm cool, you know, in Chicago, but I have stores in Homewood, you know,
Mhm.
um, 187th Street, you know, and so it's like I don't have a vehicle, so I have to rent a U-Haul and actually drive out to all of these places, you know, and it's like, is
Mhm.
this the best use of my time? But you know, is
Mhm.
my thing, so it's like I have to do it, but you know, I can reach out and get some help. So I feel like I'm moving in a direction of doing more political
Mhm.
you know, cartoons. But to go back to your question about like abstract and representation, like the thing I really like about in Masani's work, um, first, the fact that you post a lot of your stuff, you know, because
Yeah.
that's when I see it on Instagram and things
Yeah.
like that. And I need to post more of my stuff. And I think as artists, I can't speak for anyone else, but I'm not really big on social media and like posting, you know, regularly, which is what
Yeah.
you need to do. So I really respect her for that. Um, but you know, I think about like my aunt in Easley, South Carolina, who did the quilts, you
Mhm.
know, and sort of the patchwork, you know, pattern. So it's like that whole tradition of just like textures and stuff like really goes back, you know. And I see a lot of that in you know, in Masani's work and like abstract work. And I think people just need to see it more because like yes, we respond to faces and figures, but it's something about seeing something that's like a brush stroke or just
Mhm.
different
That's time.
patterns and
Yeah.
textures and like what that means.
Mhm.
You know, you
Mhm.
do have to kind of look at it and think about it more, you know. But I think people just have to be exposed to more of that.
Yeah. That's exactly what I feel about her work is that, you know, I'm always influenced by the texture, the
Mhm.
object, the color, you know, it all resonates somehow. It's speaking to you, you know. So yeah, I definitely see that in her work.
Thank you.
And anything else that Masani that that you're working on, or you're getting ready for, or you want to share with us?
Yeah. I have a love-hate relationship with social media. Like I've tried to get off of Facebook, but there's core people that are on there, and I'm like, okay, I try to post as often, which people are like, that's a lot. I'm like, I see people post extremely, like 2-3 times a day. So it's like, I'm, thank you. I'm trying to do better. So, um, part introvert issues too. Um, yeah, there's three things. We just closed Third Coast Disrupted yesterday. But we do have a catalog and a virtual tour, which is on my website. The links are there. And I was asked to do some posters for the Greenwood Art Project, which is regarding the Greenwood Centennial in Oklahoma. And those pieces were featured in a PBS Portraits documentary, and a Google Doc just recently. And so those will be, along with other artists, available to be seen. I have links again on my website. And the last thing is, I've been kind of weary about how to announce this, but 3 of my works from that series, called the Resilience series, were recently acquired by the Illinois State Museum.
Wow, kudos.
I'm really happy about that.
Hey, yeah.
Happy that it's,
congratulations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. That is really great.
Yeah. So it's just a lot of stuff. I feel very optimistic about this year. I know that everything that's going on, I think the only thing you can do is look up from this point. So, yeah.
Hey, well, it was wonderful talking with you all, and I have to put a plug in for all right, we're going to continue. I had a couple of last questions, and if it doesn't apply, don't worry about it. What's your favorite art tool? Your artist tool. What's your favorite artist tool?
Wow. Scissors. Anything that cuts. Anything that staples, nails. Anything that tears apart or puts together. Otis, like, I gotta know this.
I had to make you think, Otis.
Well, I mostly paint when I'm doing fine art painting. I'm doing acrylic on canvas, so I really love that medium. But right now, like with the editorial cartoons, I'm doing a lot of like ink on paper, and scanning the drawing and then finishing it in Photoshop. So that's kind of what I'm doing. Yeah.
Hey, well, I'm gonna have to get with you because are you good at Photoshop?
I'm pretty good at Photoshop.
Oh, okay, cool.
I use Photoshop at work, so I'm always doing something.
Hey, if I could just resize something the right size, I would be appreciative. Okay.
You can do that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This has been great. I'm sure people will learn a lot more about your art. So, how can people find you?
In MasaniLandfair.com, and all of my links are on my website.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. All right, Otis, we can find you at?
Yeah, my main website is lavenderpop.com. I'm also on Twitter at Lavender Poppin'. That's my more political, personal, crazy stuff. And then I have a separate Twitter for the cars, which I'm trying to be more active on, and that's at Lavender Pop Card.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you don't have to do a whole lot of editing, but I hope it was good for you. I'm really happy to talk to you both, and look for this to come out if they get everything edited by tomorrow. Okay, so
all right,
it'll be up. So one last thing that I want to do is, Ronnie Marie, if you have that, I want to throw up Lindsay Bates is giving a class on what is the name of his class? He's another friend of ours. He's going to come up on an upcoming show. He's an artist and illustrator, and he's doing a class on let's see. He's offering a course on the principles of is it technology principles of animation. Animation class, right until the 24th. I don't know if we'll be able to show that right now, but it'll be on the link at the bottom, along with your information as well, once we do all the editing. But his will be up next, and I guess next month we're gonna do another show, and it'll probably be all women since it's Women's History Month. So
all right.
okay. Thank you so much.